What do you make of high bandwidth memory, the focus on US chip makers to get into that space?
Yeah, I mean, we've witnessed probably the largest deployment of advanced semiconductor content ever in our history. And the reason that's happened is because we've advanced AI over the last couple of years. And, you know, those advancements continue. I mean, we've really laid the tracks the last couple of years with pre-training of all these models from OpenAI, from Google with Gemini, Anthropic, and others. And what's really interesting now is we're actually making the transition from what we've seen with these models to reasoning. And that's a really big deal because now we're going to start seeing the handoff in a pretty material way from pre-training and training to actually inference and time-based inference. And so that should continue to be quite good for accelerated computing. It's just the mix might get a little different over time. But as it relates to just, you know, GPUs, custom ASICs from the hyperscalers, high bandwidth memory, optics, you know, it should continue to be quite strong.
Janus Henderson has some exposure to Micron, but I'm not seeing it, for example, in your global technology fund, for example. I'm interested, therefore, more about what you think about the shift that we've seen going on from all in on picks and shovels, all in on the infrastructure build out when it comes to semiconductors, but now people moving across to software, now people thinking that it's the application layer that people are more interested in.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, you know, I actually think 2025 is going to be a really interesting year because you can't put the investment into data centers that we put in over the last couple of years unless you start to monetize it. And we're actually starting to see the breadcrumbs, particularly over the last couple of quarters, from a lot of companies. And, you know, you hit it on the head, you know, the application software ecosystem, whether that's publicly traded vendors that are starting to actually talk about specific contributions to their revenue models, or a ton of, you know, startups, obviously, that are, you know, racing to, you know, disrupt the existing vendors and take advantage of this multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. And what's really interesting is, you know, the software industry, you know, over the last 20 years, you know, grew to, you know, I don't know, $600–700 billion in aggregate as it expanded the software TAM. But as you really start thinking about what AI can do, this jump to reasoning, and where we're going from here, and it brings not only the software TAM into play, but this, you know, larger, you know, services TAM that can be attacked by AI, and that should be really good for the software ecosystem.
How are we going to start to see the wheat from the chaff here, though, Denny? Throughout 2024, in many ways, all boats have risen until the second half, and then we started to pit winners against losers. Are we going to see that continue? Look, we take a case study of Adobe just not managing to deliver when it comes to how much generative AI is going to get to their bottom line, compared to Palantir that has just exploded ever higher because of the AI opportunity.
Yeah, well, that's where we're at. And I mean, we've actually seen a narrowing in the semiconductor ecosystem in terms of the winners as we look at picks and shovels, and that's to be expected. Every time there's a big theme like this, you get a rising tide lifts all boats, and then you get a narrowing of it. And, you know, and I think that's what we're going to see across, you know, the rest of the tech ecosystem, including software in 25. As you said, we'll separate the wheat from the chaff. The companies that are actually having meaningful contribution from AI, they're going to get higher multiples. Their growth is going to accelerate, and it's going to be goodness. And then there are going to be companies that are clearly struggling to get to the right side of time, as you mentioned. And Adobe's, and you know, it's an interesting case study because it's been a heavily debated stock in the investment community for the last couple of years, as investors have gone from Adobe being on the right side of time as it relates to AI to potentially being on the wrong side of time.
Talking of wrong side of time, many trying to pass what the right or wrong side of the next administration is going to be. This is going to affect, for example, some internet names I know that you focus in on, Denny. And at the moment, we've got the breaking news that the US Supreme Court is going to hear arguments over a TikTok divestment. We're going to dig into that in a moment. But we do see regulatory implications for a lot of companies coming. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, well, not too differently than how we've navigated it for the last handful of years. And what I mean by that, we've had a very hostile backdrop for the last 4 years. So is it going to get worse? It's probably hard to get worse. Is it going to get better? Might get a little bit better in certain areas, but I expect it to continue to be a difficult environment for large cap tech. That diminishes the opportunity for them to do M&A. And then it also, we will continue to see aggressive postures from the DOJ like we've seen with the Google case.